So thank you very much for coming, our online people and our in-house people. Welcome to Kay Tucker, who's going to present us a workshop all about creative teaching. And it stems from lots of years of your own teaching, your own explorations into cello technique and methods of teaching, and from research you did on your MA.
Thank you very much, Laura. I'm going to start actually with a little bit of music. It's not very, very long. By one of my little students in the week that she turned 5 and had just started school. And she was a product of a system that I developed called Stringbabies, which was my first, I would say, real exploration into teaching creatively. So the title of the talk is From Scales to Elégie, and we're going to be looking at creative teaching. So to begin with, in this hour, we're going to have a whistle-stop tour of a Stringbabies method, which I developed over 20 years ago. And then I further explored this in my MA, which drew on Stringbabies principles for my research. So, what do we mean by creative teaching? I think bearing in mind that most modern teaching, instrumental teaching, is geared towards enabling our students to reproduce music rather than come up with anything particularly original. So a very quick summary of creative teaching could be that it involves using imaginative, responsive and student-centered approaches to help learners develop technical skill, musicality, independence and confidence. I was going to show you a video, but for some reason things aren't going to play ball with it, but if you want to look up Ken Robinson, the late great Sir Ken Robinson on YouTube, you might have heard of Stringbabies, you might have thought of toys if you've heard of Stringbabies, and very, very young children. And to be absolutely fair, when I first developed Stringbabies, I was catering for a very select audience, 3 to 6 year old cellist. At that time, I didn't think there was very much out there that would enable my students to be able to understand music literacy. Most of the training is geared towards oral training, and I wasn't happy with that. Most, and to a degree this is still largely true, I think, most tutors and early methods are still geared towards children from about the ages of 7 years upwards. Not all, it's a bit better, but at the time we're talking about 20 years ago, there was very little indeed. So there was the first book, it called it Cello Babies, 3 to 6 year olds. I then started finding that older students actually were benefiting from starting with Stringbabies. And so I got rid of the 3 to 6 year old children and just said children. And then, finally, 20 years later, we have got a whole, shall we say, parade of Stringbabies, spin-offs and tail-offs or whatever they call them. And this came about because I was finding that my colleagues, as Stringbabies gained traction, were using it with older students, even adults who had never learnt to read music, and also students with special educational needs. So I did hear about teachers who would be using it with Down syndrome students, and my own daughter, who has special needs, has been benefiting very much from learning Stringbabies and being able to learn to read music. So, that, whoops, have we got, yes we have got a nice picture of a foundation. So through doing VMA, I had realised that Stringbabies had been intuitively designed using solid and recognised educational concepts, which at the time I hadn't got a clue about, but they were developed by psychologists such as Vygotsky and Jerome Bruner. And as such, I realised that Stringbabies is really only the foundational level, the first very, very level of a much bigger approach to learning, which is in itself very creative, and it involves composition and improvisation as a vehicle for learning. And above all, it creates the condition where individuals, students, feel empowered to express themselves how they would like and make decisions, as this student did who played this little piece I opened up with. So that's the foundations of my extension, which is nearly built. Let's see if this will move on. Yes, and here's a scaffold. I thought I've got to get a picture of a scaffold in there, because the thing about Stringbabies, it is not a substitute. When you go on and have a look at the notation, you'll think, oh, is this just a substitute for conventional notation? It isn't. It's a scaffold. It's a stepping stone to enable students with no experience of reading music to be able to learn, to be able to comprehend that. So it is very much a route to comprehending conventional notation and all that it implies. So I'm going to briefly explain how Stringbabies introduces shape notation. So here on the left of a board you've got the notes which I use for cello, and on the right the notes that shapes that I use for violin. So the shapes are for pitch. Now with a very, very young student, the first thing I would use would be a toy, and the toy would then acquire a shape. But with an older student, you just could go into using shapes. Obviously, there is a certain approach. You don't just throw it up for them all at once. You have to break it down and introduce this gradually. But those are the things that we use for shapes. And then here, on the left-hand side, we deal with rhythm quite separately, and I started off with crotchets and quavers. I call them tars and TTs, using rhythmic so far because we can hear exactly what the rhythm sounds like. And eventually, when the student is reading the shapes and they're quite confident with rhythm, we begin to marry the two together, as you can see on the right. Now you might want to know how we get the students composing just from that first lesson. So I've got a whiteboard here which I will hold up in a minute, and I'm going to just put down some random cello shapes. Just in case you've got any violinists here, I'll put down a violin shape at the top. So these are the shapes, and as the student learns to recognise a shape and link it to a string, we use a whiteboard to place the shapes. Now, what we do is I'll then get the student to pluck each string. We're talking like the very first 2 or 3 lessons. They'll pluck the string, and then when they've conducted that satisfactorily, I give them the board and they can make up their own order. So, Laura, would you like to jumble up an order for me?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to take the board. And this would be, I would be the student, the small student or whoever, and I get these in the lesson, which is quite fun. And it doesn't matter which way up I put them. My triangle doesn't have to point a certain way.
Absolutely not.
And then I'd be quite excited because I'm not going to let you see.
I shall look away.
Okay. Okay, there you go.
Okay. Oh, I've got to look at, right. Thank you. I'll look at that way. So we've got George for G. And I'm not going to be put off by the fact that triangle's the wrong way. And at that point, if you were a teacher, you'd be whooping and
Woohoo!
well done and all that and giving me stickers or whatever. But this...
And they've got names too.
They have.
Children like names. People like names.
George, Dan, Alice and Charlie. And Ed for the violin E string. Now, the thing about this is that very, very young children don't necessarily know their alphabet, so we use phonics. And having a friendly name which begins with the same letter, it ensures that seamless progression that when they do acquire their knowledge of the alphabet, you then just substitute G for George, and it naturally drops away. But this is composition. I didn't recognise it as such, but when the student is making the choices, because this is what we do when we compose, we make choices about the notes at our disposal, and we arrange them. And you can only get a limited, obviously, amount of, shall we say, combinations here. But if you have more shapes, and if you have some shapes which are, if I've got a copy, I think I have, let's see, yeah. I've got something like this, which is Dan on Tete. So I've only brought a couple of those. Once they can start creating their own music on the whiteboard on a line of shapes. Now, it's more than just sticks and shapes. The first thing that actually happens in a lesson is they start learning a bank of songs, all based on a perfect fifth. And the first one, which is this one. Hello, everyone, join us in a cello song. We start to learn that just singing it. It's the first thing we do, and we use solfa. Would you like to join me? Here we go.
Just singing.
Just singing,
okay.
Yeah, that's right. Hello, everyone, join us in a cello song. So, do, so, do, so, do, do, so, do. Well done, thank you very much. We hear that every week. We also have a goodbye song, which is based on the major triad. And they hear this every week, and within a very short time, they'll start telling you when their instrument is out of tune. So we've covered 4 things that we do. Learning a bank of songs, starting with a perfect fifth. Learning pitch symbols. I've shown you 2 rhythm symbols. We start very small and simple, so we keep the choices quite narrow to begin with. They're already composing because they're making choices about shapes, and if you give them a whiteboard marker and a blank whiteboard, they'll love trying to draw some tars and tetes. And I've known students go home and write tars and tetes using bath cranes at bath time on the side of a bath, I've been told, and all sorts of things like that. We also have developing technique. The first technique they're going to learn is how to pluck the strings. That's after how to sit or hold the instrument. And then, of course, they're going to perform. They're going to play back exactly what they've played. So they're sight reading back everything. And so what has happened that over the years, Stringbabies has developed a strong reputation for encouraging strong sight reading skills and creative skills as well. So I'm going to move on. Here's another educational principle. So this is a representation of Jerome Bruner's spiral. And basically, I've just described some elements in Stringbabies, 6 elements. And what we do is we revisit them over and over again, every week. And each time we might add a new element. So it increases in complexity. And I understood now why Stringbabies, actually, people were making very, very solid progress, because they started with these simple concepts and we were just constantly revisiting these 6 principles and just adding another layer. And I used to think, until I did my MA, that once you were into conventional music, that would be it. So here we go.
It went ahead one.
I went ahead one, did I?
It did.
Oh gosh, I
No.
don't know how to go back. How do I go back on here?
With the back arrow.
No,
No,
that's wrong.
not with the mouse.
Not with a mouse. Right,
If you click off of that,
thank you. I think,
you have to use the back arrow.
there we go. That's it, thank you. I live and learn. So, this gives you an intermediate stage in the Stringbabies process. We go from 1 line to 2 lines to 3 lines. That's a significant point. When you're at 3 lines, you can then start introducing some conventional music alongside. What you don't do is do the Stringbabies book and then try to go onto conventional music. It doesn't work. It's almost like train tracks going alongside each other, and you do a little crossover now and again into conventional notation. So, at this stage, and this was a discovery I made in the 2nd year of doing cello babies as it was then, I had a lesson with 3 little boys, aged 4. We'd done a Stringbabies lesson on a 3 lines, using a 3 line stave. I'd taken one of their, I think it was a Cello Time joggers piece, and I transcribed it using shape notation. And they enjoyed playing that. I was still struggling in my mind, how do I get beyond that? How do I leap into conventional notation? And it was answered for me accidentally by the next student, who was a 12-year-old in grade 2. And she sat down while I was packing all these toys away and just played the little boys' music. And then suddenly said, "Oh, Mrs. Tucker, that's not what I thought that was. They're all shapes, and there's only 3 lines. Oh, that's awfully clever." And I realised she had been hoodwinked into thinking it was conventional notation. And so from that point on, I started bringing in books with conventional notation in, fairly selective, you know, anything with really large print or something quite simple on the page. And with the little students, we started hunting for familiar symbols. And surprisingly, they had latched onto it. And so at this point, you are starting with most students to do a bit of Stringbabies notation and then a bit of conventional reading. And eventually, they do leave the Stringbabies notation, you know, they leave it behind. Most times, I think on the occasions when it doesn't happen, in my experience, it's been when the student is presenting with a condition like dyslexia. It does seem that shape notation seems to make it much easier for students who have dyslexia. And yes, I think that's really the main cause. It's usually dyslexia, or if they've got a special need, which, you know, 5 lines and a stave would just be beyond them for most of the time. So, now we're going on to the improvisation bit, and if you want to get your instruments out, would be lovely to have a violinist in this. There we go. So that was the title of my MA research, Facilitating Composition for the Intermediate Cello Student with the goal of enhancing creativity and instrumental learning. So there's no going to the beginners for this. We were working with grade 4 to 6 students. And I knew that the one thing I wanted to examine and look at was taking this principle of my Stringbabies students composing their own music. And by this stage I've got a whole compendium of compositions that they've been able to do. So I had some very interesting conversations with professional composers, one of whom was an ex-string baby. And the first thing that I learned was that all their compositions started with improvisation. And I had to explore my research through devising 2 interventions, which I'm going to share now. So, the first one, let's see, I've put this, it's model, copy, improvise. We're going to learn a scale. Now, have you got your cello, Laura?
I do.
So, we're going to learn E flat major scale. Now, the thing is, I know you know it. I hope you know it. But we're going to, I taught this to a student, one of my sample, who was extremely reluctant to do any composition. In fact, his mother phoned me in a bit of a panic when we mentioned the word composition and the research was about to start, and he was getting very worried about it. He seemed like, didn't like the word. He thought it was akin to maths, literacy. He just wanted to play his cello. But he was preparing for grade 4 and he had to learn some scales, and E flat is one of them. So the first thing we started was to just find our E flat, and she's ready, okay? And we started by playing the open D string and then matching it with 3rd finger on the A string. Do you want to copy me?
We should all do it.
Yeah? That's great. That's lovely. That's great. Now we can improvise a little bit with this. So what I'm going to do is I will play you a little figure using those 2 notes, and you just play it back to me. You ready? Good. Now, I don't want you to change any notes, but I'd like you to change the rhythm. We'll take it, I'll give you a stare if it's your turn. So I'll play that little figure, and I just want you to give me a very quick variant back. Thank you. Lovely. Ooh, wonderful. Very, very, very good. So, we're going to now go with, if you want to use a bow, you're very welcome. If you want to do pizzicato, that's okay. So we're going to do E flat first. We're going to do this descending. It's somehow easier, I think, to start with a set hand shape. So 3rd finger is still on the D. Yeah, that's right. And you just put your 4th finger down. And I'm going to keep this very simple. I'm going to model, you will copy, I will play again, model, and then you improvise. Now, we'll take that in turns. Okay, so this, I'll do it with the violin first. Well done. Here's the next note. notes. Ready? So, here we go. We're going to cross over. I'm going to add a note. Here we go. So I've moved forward. Do you want to copy me? Ready? Good, well done. Now, if I do those, I'm going to go upwards this time and do a little rhythm. And if you just give me something back, Laura.
Okay.
Oh, great, that's wonderful. And then we'll go a bit further. It's obviously different technically for a violinist, but here we go. Are you going to be all right for this?
Yeah.
Yeah, well done. Do you want to copy me? Just copy it. Well done, that's great. Now give me a different response back rhythmically. Good, well done, that's lovely. So that's how we can model a scale. Now we can mix it up a bit, we did. Yeah. Should we mix it up? Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
I'll just maybe, yeah. You ready to copy that? Well done, well done. Do you want to improvise on that, Laura? Good. If you move stepwise, you can be more secure about your tuning. But then you can start to mix those notes up and, don't have to go stepwise. You can do a nice little interval if you wish. So that's how that works. And with a student, you just work your way down the scale, really teaching hand positions and by using the ears and just a select number of notes. You can then just go from one position through to another quite randomly. And so what they're learning to improvise, because you're asking for a different response, straight away. Now, if you've got a student who's really, really scared of doing anything or committing, just say, just change one note. Just change one note. Just make one note a tete maybe. And that usually helps them to just break free of any worries. I think the thing to remember is there's no wrong answer. There's no wrong answer when it comes to improvisation. Now, okay, so I'm going to demonstrate a simple version. Have you done thumb position yet?
No.
Nope, that's okay. You're happy playing harmonics?
No.
Okay, that's all right. So I'll do a quick lesson,
Okay.
see how it goes. If you put your thumb into the neck, yeah, and then just gently reach out onto the D string with your third finger only. Reach out a bit further. Right, a bit further. Go on, that's it. Just so it feels relaxed now. See what happens. Yeah, go. Whee! We have a harmonic. Well done. Okay, hang on to that harmonic. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're not going to take this. I'll take this solely so far with yourself at the moment because this is really new territory. But here we go. So harmonic D. You ready for to copy me? Sorry, I forgot your name.
Daniel.
Good. Now, if you give me a different rhythm back. Good. Okay. Well done. Now, could you give me a different response back? time we're going to add A. Okay, so the finger might cross over A. Just remember, Daniel, all you've got to do is really relax that hand and just stretch out comfortably, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry about it. And if it doesn't sound, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
So we're going to... Could you do that, Daniel? Well done. You want to have a go?
That's it.
That's it. Well done, Daz. No, that's fine. Just use your third finger because it's really long. And just stretch it right out. Stretch it.
That's it.
There you go. Well done. That's it. Try again. Okay. So what I suggest with you, Daniel, you practice those harmonics. When you feel confident doing that, you can then add your thumb and do it from with your thumb like this. That's something you can probably do at home, yeah. But that's definitely a stick. You don't use your thumb. You're lucky, aren't you? Lucky with it, yeah? Now, I'm just going to demo with Laura, if that's all right, with Laura, the lovely Laura, how we can do this. And I've just got to keep an eye on the time too, sorry. So here we go. Oh, I meant to use the thumb, sorry. There we go. That's another element. Ooh. Good. Well done. And now we're going to add another element. Ooh. Now, Laura, because she's a genius, is going just straight to improvisation. But the first thing I do with most students is I get them to copy me first. And then, so we're modelling, copying, modelling, and the student improvises. By which time they usually lost their inhibitions. Now, because you're going through this all the time in this way, they soon learn all the hand positions they need for their new scale. And it's amazing. You've not even read a note of music. The scale book has not even been opened. When I tried this out with other colleagues and their students, apparently the students were absolutely loving it as a method. So it does really, really work very well. And this is how you can be using improvisation to teach scales. Now, here we're going to go to something a little bit more free-form. I decided to call this a meeting place, and we can all join in with this. So, whatever technique you're teaching, it might be a rhythm, it might be a bowing technique. We're going to sort of skip on a little bit. I'm going to play on a G, and I'm going to play some quavers. Now, we'll have been talking to my students about how they'll use the bow. In fact, they'll be using small amounts of bow. We'll be trying to keep the wrist loose, keep the fingers loose, and we'll be placing the bow in the middle. And what I do, I just start off. I'm like keeping the time. Now, what I'll ask you to do, when I do that, or something like that, I'll do something like this. I want you to join in with me, okay? And just join in with me, and I'll then give one of you the nod. I'll give you the eye. So think about ensemble playing, how this is encouraging ensemble playing. And now what I want you to do, I just want you to improvise anything over that. Remember, there are no wrong notes. You can do whatever you like. I would just say play out for the recording, yeah, if you can. And when you think, oh, I can't go anymore, I've run out of ideas, you just return to the meeting place. And then it's going to be somebody else's turn, and I'll give you the nod, yeah? So, yeah, is that all right? I'll give you the cold, hard stare. Okay, and that way we're going to go around and we'll have some new music. Ready? So here we go. Join me when you want to. Make sure you're looking at me to start with. Off you go. Now, if you're playing for G's, let's be soft. Want to go round again? There we go. Off you go. Lovely. Thank you. Well done. We're going to come off. There you go. And we've just created an ensemble piece. I think this works really, really well as a little exercise. I call it a meeting place because we've got a figure. We all gather round. We all come back and meet over it. So that is definitely something you can do with any level of student. Any level of student. Was that okay, Daniel?
Yeah, that was fine.
Yeah. Great to see you exploring third position there. Well done. Right, now. So in the title, we had From Etude to Elégie. Or was it? No, from there. I don't think that was. So I thought I'd better have a bit of an elegy in there, hadn't I? Ha ha! So, well, the other intervention I did was to look at conventional music. And you can do this with any piece. I think by looking at it and using it as a kind of model or a template for a composition, you can learn a lot about form in music. Now, I hadn't pinned up for his Elégie. I've just copied the first line of the first 4 bars of a melody. And I'm going to just give a couple of examples of ways we toyed around with it. Now, composers would do this with any kind of music, and they'd call it a variation. And they might vary the rhythm, they might vary the notes. And actually, if a student thinks, I can't come up with something original, what better way than to take an existing piece of music, and it could be as simple as Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and let's say, let's just change the order of those notes. Let's try playing it backwards. So I'm looking at this because, you know this. to a student and I say, well, would you like to try playing that backwards? See what happens? And it's all a matter of what happens. Yeah, so here we go. That's not too bad, is it? Yeah? What about if we invert the intervals? I hope I've done this correctly. I did it late at night, so I might not have, but it looks interesting. I think you'd agree. Yeah?
Can I just ask what you mean by invert the intervals?
Invert the intervals. So if the gap between one note and the next, if it says goes from one note up to up a third, you're going to invert it. Well, if you correctly inverted it, you'd go down, I think, a sixth. But I might be wrong there. But I've just gone in the opposite direction by this. So it's like a mirror image. Yeah. Yeah. There's all sorts of ways you can interpret the word invert, but that is pretty much what I tried to do here, like a mirror image. Whether it's, I did it correctly or not, you'll agree, that last one didn't sound anything like what we started with. The other thing you can be experimenting is with tempi, with speeds. What happens when you speed something up or slow it down? And, discuss with your student, what's the mood here? What do you think? What does this turn into? Try adding a beat into a bar. If it's in 4 beats in a bar, you could add an extra beat. So this there's such a lot, and it helps you to dig deeper, shall we say, into what has the composer, how the composer has, the original composer, has, constructed the music. Makes me think also about how some composers used to construct variations. I think of a story I remember from my A-level days I studied the Diabelli variations by Beethoven. And basically the story is, I believe it's true of course, that this chap called Diabelli composed a little waltz or a minuet, and he held a competition for all the composers around about Vienna to come up with a set of variations. And Beethoven was a little bit sniffy at first about it, but he decided to have a go and threw his hat into the ring. And he said, well, it's a simple little piece, but he yielded a few good things. And what he did, very interestingly, was he did a variation. His next variation was a variant of a previous one. So you've got goodness knows how many variations. It was certainly in excess of 20, I believe. And every variation was an improvisation from the previous one. I mean, the possibilities are endless. You could do that easily. So that's only a little snippet, but I think it also helps deepen a student's understanding of the piece. Now, I took this approach with 2 of my sample, as it were, the MA, and in fact, the boy who was reluctant to compose, we also did with one of his simple grade 4 pieces. We just tried playing the first line of his melody, one of his grade 4 pieces backwards, and he felt confident then to go away using the same rhythm and come up using the same notes but in a different order. So it enabled him to take that step, and the joy it brings them. They're definitely, all the students reported that they were very, very much enjoyed creating their own music, and that their ideas about what composing meant changed completely. Now, if we've got time, got some time for some questions. I wondered whether to play, because we're talking about an elegy, and if I've got it here, I could play you a little bit of an elegiac piece, which during the time of my MA, one of my students surprised me with. The brief was, compose a prelude we'd been learning, you know. That one, Bach. And he came back with something totally different. And we were having a discussion about it, and he said, I was inspired by this, by Elgar's cello concerto, which is, you know, as elegiac a piece as you get. So here we go. I'll do my best with this one.
Wisdom from experience where she's intuited a lot of things, but some of the exercises, taking part in them, having not done them before, feels like brain gym. I don't know if any of you have done brain gym, you know, where it accesses different parts of it, stretches. We practice things start to finish. We practice things in an order. If anyone's done associated board type exams, not necessarily that one, but type exams, you do certain things on a list and you do them over and over in that way. And as you said, there are ways to reinforce good building blocks, but also then you've let us have a musical stretch and a creative stretch. And it was, you know, it was fun, even though daunting and sometimes out of a comfort zone or not what we're used to. Very, you know, lots of smiling, I'm sure, in the background, and a lot of freedom and exploration beyond what people thought. Also, I don't know if you know, there is great success with naming things and the strings that have names. And some methods teach you by numbers, you know, I write fingerings on everything, you know, we have numbers that go with things and we count, but the names, our brains process names differently.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and there is a very famous example is IKEA. The guy who started IKEA was dyslexic, and he named all of his product lines after different geographical features, like land. You'd get trees named after rivers, named after then boys' names and girls' names for it. So all bedroom furniture, and it was one type of thing. All kitchen thing is one type, because he could remember it. And it also, we process names differently.
Yeah.
So there's much more in what you've done than, then you realize you keep uncovering things. And there's a reason why it works really well, because you're accessing bits of brain that are really good.
Well, and it's stood the test of time.
Yeah.
I mean, I spent the first 10 years of my career, having developed Stringbabies, trying to prove to the rest of the world that it actually worked. It was a painful process, because I think teachers are very conservative by nature.
Well, very often, although we do creative things, we don't teach creative processes. We teach, do this thing now, here you go figure it out.
Yeah.
It's quite hard. It's a hard lesson for any of us to go do that.
Yeah. And it's giving, and it's a pity the Ken Robinson clip didn't work. There's a lovely little story in there where it's one of his favourite stories, where apparently a little girl is drawing a picture, and her teacher says, "Who are you drawing a picture of?" "God." And he says, "Well, nobody knows what God looks like." And he said, "Hang on, they'll know in a minute." And this is a point he makes, is that children, particularly children, are willing to take a chance. Yeah. And so when you give your, young student a range of notes to mess around with in a scale or on a whiteboard, it's safety. It's safety. And that does inspire their confidence. It really does encourage that.
But do any of you have any questions, or online people any questions? Or I'm sure Kay would answer questions by email as well, in future, be contactable.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, via the website, stringbabies.com.
Contact me and you'll reply.
Or Laura.
Yeah.
How long were you teaching before you came up with Stringbabies?
Oh gosh, yeah. So I started teaching professionally in about 1987. I think, if I'm honest, elements of Stringbabies were always developing right from the word go. It started coming together around year 2000. So how 13 years, 12, 13 years. But I was always looking for different ways, because I think as a teacher I felt a responsibility towards my students. I wasn't satisfied if a student had difficulty. I thought there always had to be a solution. So I was always a little bit unconventional, and using toys. I'd been using toys in my teaching long before I developed Stringbabies, actually.
Good. Well, thank you.
Okay. Welcome.
I'll sign off and say thank you guys for turning up online. Thank you guys for being here. And see you again. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
That's okay. Bye.